10 years ago, I built my very first gaming PC, this one right here. Back then, the generational divide between the experience that you could get on a very capable gaming PC and that of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 current generation consoles at the time was very significant. I often describe it as sort of you were getting PS4 and Xbox One quality graphics back in 2011, 2012, years before those consoles launched. And the 7th generation lasted a lot longer than I think anyone had anticipated. And so the hardware was just stretched very thin, and we got to see a lot of games by the end of that generation that were honestly just too ambitious for the hardware at play. These days, we are fortunate enough to have a 60 frames per second option for almost all of the games on the current generation of consoles. But even if that's not the case, the 30 frames per second option is relatively smooth just about most of the time. You don't really see games struggling to run anymore on these machines. But I remember back during the end of the PS3 and Xbox 360's life cycle that there were just a lot of games that didn't run well on the hardware. And it wasn't just third parties, it was also the first party exclusives as well. Critically acclaimed games like Far Cry 3, The Last of Us, even Grand Theft Auto 5 struggled to hit their 30 frames per second targets, as beautiful as those games were back in the day. And so honestly, we had a generation here that probably should have ended 2 years before it actually did. But unfortunately, it stretched on, and it became known as, I believe, the longest single generation of the home consoles. There were a lot of great games that released, and it still stands as my favorite generation in gaming just because of the incredible innovation and just progression that we saw throughout the gaming industry during that time. But I had recognized this generational divide, and I saw games like Battlefield 3 launching back in 2011, 30 frames per second target on the consoles. You had to download an HD texture pack because there wasn't enough RAM on the system. And on top of that, you had to deal with 32-player online lobbies. There was no 64 players back in the day because the CPUs of those consoles couldn't handle it. So it was really just seeing all of these games come out, especially with me being super excited for 2 games in particular at the time, Max Payne 3 and Far Cry 3. Those games back then were my most anticipated games coming out. But I was also skeptical of how those games would run and look on the current generation of home consoles. And so, me being a young teenager at the time, when I started seeing people build their PCs and when I started looking at these game trailers especially, and just seeing how large the divide was between the graphical complexity of these games running on PC at their ultra settings versus that of what I was getting at the time on PS3 and Xbox 360, it really encouraged me to take a dive and actually build a gaming PC. And so I got some parts. I remember my dad had loaned me, I believe, $1,300 at the time, and this was part of basically a glorified Christmas gift. And I had built this computer. I decided to record it for YouTube, but little did I realize that I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I was making a bunch of mistakes, and I was going to get called out for it. One thing I am really thankful about looking back on it today is that I didn't try to act like an authority on building a computer. I was excited to share my experience with everyone, and I think to some degree I even kind of, talked about what I've learned and sort of the instructions and things like that, but the videos weren't named how to build a gaming computer. It was just called building a gaming computer. And so I think that's, incidental decision that I did to call those videos that, and also, just thankfully me not acting like an arrogant jerk when I was doing it, I got called out, but at the same time, no one was really taking me seriously enough to the point where, I was going to get sort of ridiculed in a more demeaning way than I did. But, I learned from my mistakes, and I certainly made a ton of them during that video, and ultimately I would go on, and that sort of, all the frustrations and everything that I went through in those video series would go on to fuel basically my redemption run, which I made a sequel to those videos called Building a 4K gaming computer, and that PC is still the one that I use today. But today, on the 10th anniversary of me uploading those videos, I wanted to actually go back, watch those videos myself after all these years, kind of see the mistakes that I would catch immediately. And we're also going to be checking out this PC to actually see how it performed and what type of experiences that I was getting back then versus, if I decided to not do this and just play on my consoles. So before we get to actually watching the videos, what did I put in this PC? What are the specs of this build? For reference, I call this computer Molten, based after the lava rock. The reason is because this computer came with red LEDs and it had like this sort of breathing, almost steamy atmosphere to it. So my current computer is named Glacier with its sort of white and glass sort of aesthetic. This one I decided to name Molten. So let's get to it. Let's see what actual specs this computer has, and what did I put in this thing for $1,300 that was basically giving me a far superior experience than that on the PS3 and Xbox 360. So let's start off with the housing of these components. This is the Cooler Master Storm Enforcer mid-tower PC chassis. It came with a large 280 millimeter fan at the front with red LEDs, and then at the rear here it has a 120 millimeter fan for the exhaust. There is room at the top there for what looks like another 240 millimeter fan if you want to put it up there, but I decided not to go with that. For the motherboard, I decided to go with the Asus P8Z68V. This was a LGA 1155 motherboard and had all the basic components that I needed to connect everything with. For the processor, I decided to go with the Intel i5-2500K. This is a quad-core processor that I believe has a base clock of 3.3 gigahertz, and it was extremely popular at the time. In fact, I believe this is one of the longest lasting processors that a lot of PC gamers used back then and had continued used for many, many years. For the RAM, I went with a set of Patriot Sector 5 G series, two 4 gigabyte sticks running at 1600 megahertz, which at the time was very respectable for gaming. The graphics card was an EVGA GTX 560 Ti for the Win edition with 448 CUDA cores. This was not the preferred graphics card that I actually wanted with the system originally. However, and I'll explain this later when I watch the videos, I sort of got this card almost by accident, and it was a very, very, very good decision and resulted in me basically being able to play games at relatively high and ultra settings at a 1080p resolution and getting really steady, smooth 60 frames per second experiences. For the storage capacity, I just went with a Western Digital black drive at 7200 RPMs. This was a hard drive at 500 gigabytes. I did not put an SSD in this machine. In fact, SSDs were, I don't want to say they were uncommon, but you could get by without using an SSD just fine. Not like it is in today's market where now games are actually requiring them, in some cases recommending them wholeheartedly, that you run them on an actual solid state, especially an NVMe drive. So this just has a standard 500 gigabyte Western Digital black hard drive, and it was the faster of the series, but And for the power supply, I decided to go with a Thermaltake TR2 600 watt series, which has been a pretty reliable power supply. In fact, I never once replaced the power supply, and everything here still works. So as far as I'm aware, it was a good choice. It was a non-modular power supply, which, I now prefer modular power supplies when I'm working with PCs, just because you don't have to deal with all the extra unnecessary wiring. But it's a pretty good power supply, I have to say, and has been reliable thus far. And then just some other components. I did have a DVD drive in this thing because at the time I was very adamant about purchasing actual PC games on disc. Back then you could actually do that. You didn't have to get everything through, a download. Games were also sold on disc at GameStop. You guys know I did a few unboxings for some PC games back in the day. So there's just a standard, Asus 24 times rewritable DVD drive in there. So it just allows me to basically, install some game disc here and there. And I also burned some music CDs back when my car actually had a CD player. So yeah, and we also have Windows 7 Home Premium running on the system. So we got basically everything that was sort of appropriate for the time, on this actual machine. And overall, I have to say that I think the list of parts was pretty respectable, and this was what I would classify as sort of the mid-range, upper mid-range build. It wasn't sort of the high-end spec, but it was enough to basically provide a pretty good experience, definitely in comparison to that of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 at the time. So that is the build as it stands, and I'm very happy with the components. Even looking back on it today, I had to sort of compromise here and there for some parts, but I think that this was a very good build. So now that we know what's in the actual PC, the specs I'm running, let's go see what those videos are like all these years later of me actually building this thing. All right, welcome to my channel. So we're going to take a look at these videos. Now, I'm not going to sit here and literally make you guys watch through, the whole entire series again. I'm probably just going to flick through and skim through and, add some commentary here or there. But by the way, if you go to my playlist, I update these kind of frequently, and I've basically done, I think a really good job at kind of organizing these. So everything's organized by year, everything's kind of organized by category and style of video and whatnot. So if you're interested in seeing, certain types of videos and whatnot, the playlists are always updated, and as best as I can, they're organized. So I have a PC builds playlist here, which is what I'm going to use to actually kind of go through these videos. We're going to be checking out, of course, the first one. So let's take a look here. Let me start this. My God, look at me. So, sorry, let me just position the camera. So just for reference, this was my last semester of high school, because it was, January 2012. I graduated in June of 2012, and so I must be 17, I believe, right now during the time of this video. So pretty crazy. I'm actually wearing the Nathan Drake ring, it looks like, from Uncharted 3, the collector's edition. And all right, and oh my gosh, sorry to pause the video, but you can't see it because my camera's blocking it up there in the corner, but that's my original PlayStation 3 80 gigabytes. The MotorStorm, CHE01 model. So, which actually, I do have another one. I need to unbox it, but anyway, interesting times. Oh, nice underwear. Now, the computer you're going to see that I'm going to be building is... Yeah, thinking back on this now, I probably would have... I improved the camera angle in the next PC build I did, but yeah, everything was just on the floor. And I was looking, aside from it being carpet, which is fine, you could put that PC case on the carpet, but the components being on carpet was a really bad idea. But I knew nothing of static electricity or really, any of the dangers. It was an honest, innocent mistake. But, still got criticized nonetheless. What am I doing? Time to, last year was the perfect time to jump into being a PC gamer, just because we had all those great games come out for PC. Crysis 2 was that year, Rage, Rage was awful on PC at launch. Crysis 2 launched with DX9 only, which prevented a lot of advanced PC settings and features. They updated it later on, so a lot of those the consoles kind of held back those ports of the games, and so those games that should have been amazing on PC weren't really so. Definitely a computer to want to build a computer. I don't know what I'm doing. I honestly don't know what I'm doing. I'm I'm just trying to understand what's taking so long. You put the standoffs in, you put your motherboard in. Alright, here we go. There's the motherboard I had.
was a good board. You know, again, never replaced it, never had any issues with it, so it's pretty decent. So I bought all the components from Fry's Electronics, which basically doesn't exist anymore. I'm surprised they lasted as long as they did, but I had yeah, purchased all the components from there. It was the only PC component store in my area. You have Best Buy. Best Buy doesn't sell motherboards or shit like that. Um, right now I have a Micro Center that's near me, so if I want to go, you know, get PC components, I can just drive down to Micro Center. And that's a really good store. But I hated Fry's. Fry's customer service just is some of the worst I've seen. So I really don't miss them. But if you wanted PC components, that's where you needed to go. So all these components I got from Fry's.
Probably like a performance thing. Now the thing about motherboards is you gotta be careful. All right, when you're doing this, you gotta be careful. Yeah. All
Oh God. Oh God. Right there. I set it on the fucking carpet. I threw the anti-static bag away and I just plopped the motherboard right there on the carpet. That right there was like the defining moment for this whole build and what you're about to watch. Yeah. That's why I say it's like the most infamous build on YouTube. It probably isn't. I think The Verge surpassed me with their latest video because at least that's a professional firm, you know, and people expected more of that build. But yeah, this is close. This is bad. And I'm so like I'm looking there innocently, like, oh yeah, this is how you do it, right there on the carpet. Oh, even if I was building it on carpet, like let's say I just had no choice, you would place the anti-static bag on the carpet first and then put the motherboard on top of the anti-static bag. In fact, what I would probably do is not even that. I would just put the anti-static bag back in the box and put the motherboard back in the box if I wasn't going to use it right there. You wouldn't want it to come in contact with anything on the carpet. But I never got honestly I never had a short circuit with the computer whatsoever. I mean, it turned on and I used it for years. So people say I got lucky there, but still, that's a big no-no.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize, you know, building a computer, if you've never done it before, it's not as difficult as you may think. Everything is labeled for you, and it's kind of like building Legos almost. You know, you just follow the instructions, and like you plug literally power switch A into the slot that says power switch A. You know, it's just as simple as that. It's not as complicated as I think people expect to believe it is, especially if you're not really big on technology. It's relatively easy and straightforward. Oh no, I did. I'm looking at the motherboard right now. It's in dual channel memory mode. Okay. At least I was smart enough to figure that out. That's good. I think I'm using slots 3 and 4 though, not 1 and 2, which I wonder if I've actually taken those out and switched them.
Oh. And you'll see, it has holes to where the gold screws are supposed to go. So just line it up with those holes.
Now the I/O bridge, which actually has to go in first. So I already fucked up because usually the I/O bridge goes in first, and then you put in the motherboard.
Deal with it.
Or the I/O shield. I mean to call it, not the bridge. God, Cameron, come on! It's a fucking shield. Oh.
You're gonna think this is funny.
I took the motherboard out. Now I'm still trying. Yeah. Oh, I'm still trying. I'm so glad I rewatched these.
Next is the graphics card.
Oh, here we go.
You see this.
Yeah, so here's the thing.
This is, people, the AFK GTX 5.
The AVGA is because I didn't realize it's actually EVGA. So here's the thing about the 560 Ti. I originally wanted a GTX 570 for my build, and I'd done my research and I looked at it and everything like that. I went to Fry's and I told them I want a GTX 570. They came back to me and said, we don't have a 570, but I do have this. It's a GTX 560 Ti for the Win Edition. And I was like, okay, like I was like disappointed, but I was looking at it, and my dad's with me. He's paying for everything, so I didn't want to tell him, well, I don't want to do this until I get the graphics card that I want. I wasn't going to be like that. So as I'm looking at this, the salesperson, and I'll give him credit, he was perfectly right. He said to me moments later when he handed it to me, that has the performance of a 580. And I decided to take his advice and just go with it. This graphics card is exceptional, and honestly, I am very, very impressed just with the performance that it gave me over the years. Because I was getting, I mean, this is technically a souped up 560 card from Nvidia, which I guess that's the equivalent of the 3060 series. It was sort of mid-tier. But I didn't realize that the TI brand at the time was super powerful. And I didn't realize as well that on top of it being a TI, it was also a For the Win edition. So it was even more overclocked, even more powerful than your base, graphics card at the time. The one limiting factor with this card, and you'll see it here in the corner, 1.2 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, at the time, that was okay, but certainly towards the end of that generation, yeah, I started maxing out the VRAM usage. Because textures back then, I mean, you had 2 gigabytes, you were pretty much good, but that became a very limiting factor, especially with the newer games that were coming out a few years later. So, but overall, I mean, I love this card. Still to this day, it's one of the best cards I've ever used. It's mighty impressive, and it's done a fantastic job. It was also reliable, so I'm very happy with that. And as you'll see after we hook up the PC and start playing with it, I mean, the performance is phenomenal for the price. I'm still screwing stuff in. This video is a minute long? I think the battery died, and I would upload shit just like crazy, and it wasn't even good, I would just I would record something for like 2 minutes. Oh, the camera died, and I would just make that a part and then make it another part. Back then, the reason why you see these are multiple parts is back then, the idea of watching long videos was, very there was an attitude against it. I think these days much more people are accepting of longer content, so you can make a video that's like 40 minutes and everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll watch this. Back then, it's they told you to shoot for like 10 to 15 minutes per video. Interesting. All right.
I am not done. Okay, I am building this thing, and my camera batteries can die. I don't care. I'm building this. I'm using my webcam, and it's like.
What the fuck? What the fuck? I'm still I'm still messing with it. Oh my god.
Unfortunately, I mean, I could try to move it around, but yeah, I'm using my webcam now, and I am not giving up. No, not giving up. All right.
Wow. I don't remember that at all. I don't remember. I don't God, that is bad. That is really bad. Yeah, that's how it looked. That's how it looked. I had no knowledge of cable management whatsoever. I was just put the cords, shove them in the bottom somewhere. They all need to be plugging into these components, and yeah, I just nothing. This one, hold on. Just plugging in power cords. Yeah, obviously, you shouldn't. If you're going to do that, you use the back of the case for all the cable management. That's why there's a space, and that's why you can take off that back panel, is so you can do cable management. you know, and you've seen the intro to this video. The PC looks great now that that's all cable managed, but didn't know at the time. I gotta hand it to me. I was pretty optimistic at the time. You could at least tell that, you know, at least I was having a good time. I was genuinely having a good time. Didn't realize at all what I was doing. Oh, this is the hard drive?
Basically, it was a Seagate, and
Oh,
it's 2 terabytes. This is a 2 terabyte hard drive, and other
really? It's a...
it's 2000.
Okay, then I made a really big mistake in the intro to this video. I thought it was a 500 gigabyte hard drive, but it's not. It's a 2 terabyte Seagate drive. Oh, that's interesting. I'd have to look in that computer again. I wonder if no, if I remember correctly, it was a Western Digital. I looked at it. I looked at all the components I start. Okay. I think the hard drive must have died then.
1,000 gigabyte.
That's what I can... Yes, okay. Now it's coming back to me. The hard drive did die. I remember that because I bought that Seagate hard drive, and the hard drive died like it was like within like a month of the computer actually being built. And I remember at that moment I was like, yeah, I'm not buying Seagate again, which is kind of funny because I actually ended up giving them another shot when I upgraded my PS4 to a 2 terabyte. I bought that FireCuda SSHD from them, and yeah, it was I mean, that was a very solid drive. So they improved a lot over the years, but I remember that hard drive died. That's right.
Hard drive, so
I guess when it died, I got the Western Digital instead, but it was only 500 gigabytes. I could have swore. I have to look at it.
Went overboard there. But yeah.
I think I made the mistake. Oh, here's the hard drive
Put this back where it belongs.
that I just put on carpet. I think I made a mistake here having the fan go up.
Right.
And then people had told me later on that it actually doesn't matter. I believe it's an exhaust fan, or actually it might be an intake fan. People had told me that it didn't matter. I always, from my understanding, I always thought that the fan goes on the bottom, and it's, you know, it's coming from the bottom of the case, and so it'd be sucking air in from the bottom, and that's why there's a space. But I've had the fan going up, and then when I rebuilt that computer, I flipped it around. So
Side here's for older computers that have that. All right, so the hard drive's more or less in there.
no, it's not.
Last but not least, we got
Dude, it's
our
sticking
CD
out.
drive, which should just be a breeze. So we're
It's-
open this door here. Actually, there we go.
I think I may have killed my hard drive. Seeing that now, I think I may have I probably killed my hard drive by doing that. It's not even securely fastened. Oh God.
I'm sorry. Slide it in this way. Slide it. This thing came with.
It looks like it's laying on there. I don't remember what I did. Yeah, it's laying on there.
So now remove again. So
Wow. Yeah, I definitely killed that hard drive, by the way. So, sorry, Seagate. It was me. I like Seagate though. Honestly, you guys won't see this video until later, but I got a new NVMe drive for my PS5, and it's a Seagate drive. So when I do that unboxing and that installation, I mean, you'll see it when it goes live. But I like their components.
okay. Hold on.
Yeah, the hard drive is not secured.
yeah,
Oh my
you
God,
can.
there's my phone. Hold on.
Get this out of the truck.
Oh my God, that phone right here was the HTC Droid Incredible. I remember that because I had that red case on it. That was a really good phone at the
You'll do
time.
that. Got our hard drive.
Yeah, your hard drive's not secure. It's laying down on the bad side too. Like if I was gonna lay it down, at least I could have put it on the metal portion, but no, I put it on the open face with the components visible. Oh gosh.
Back into place.
Oh, look at the cables, man.
pretty much,
I just moved it over to the side.
this thing's pretty much done. So
It's
take
done.
your thing right here. I'm just gonna slide that on.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful. Fits perfect. There's our window.
This is hard.
Lift this up.
This is honestly hard to watch.
All right. Here's the side for USB plug, but as you can see, CD.
And that's the end, huh? Yeah, I guess that's the end.
Every one of these, and just once the new video goes live.
I don't even show me setting it up at all, but from what I remember, it worked for a bit, and then what I had to do is the hard drive crashed, and so I brought the computer in to Fry's, and my dad had to pay more money. My dad had to pay more money to get it actually fixed. And I remember at the time, um, they had basically, kind of put the hard drive in. He had, and kind of, in a sense, they didn't rebuild it, but they, you know, basically made sure everything was fastened and secure. And I got it back like 2 or 3 weeks later, the actual computer, and used it for a few years. And it wasn't until I built my new 4K gaming computer where I went back to that computer after accumulating all that knowledge and essentially just took it all apart and rebuilt it. And that's where, you see it how it is right now. So yeah, gosh, look at this stuff that I had set up. That was the Nathan Drake statue and the Call of Duty Black Ops medal. I don't even know where that stuff is anymore, but yeah. And then this is me, 3 years later, redeeming myself. As you can see, I got a far cry in terms of the number of views because people don't care. But all right, I mean that was a look at that was a look at me building that computer, and wow, it's a lot more painful than I remember. But I gotta say, just for myself, it's okay, to make mistakes, and I think a lot of people are very afraid of failure, especially in the public eye, but I always sort of looked at it like a very valuable lesson. And, I have people who kind of ask me from time to time, why don't you ever delete those videos? It's a bit embarrassing. For me, it's like you can still look at all this stuff. You can look at all the mistakes I made, and then you can compare it to any of the things that I do now. And you can see just how much I've grown as an individual and, how I've surpassed essentially that all those mistakes and that sort of attitude I had. And I don't know, I'm happy to have had the opportunity, and at least I gave some people a few laughs, honestly. I built my first PC ever. Didn't go perfect, but I think it went smooth. Only took about 1.5 hours, and that's while eating spaghetti, unboxing and filming it. Check it out on my channel. Okay, yeah, I'm surprised he got this far. Yeah, so, hey, it is what it is. These videos are always going to be up. I'm never going to take them down. But glad I gave some people some entertainment. And now let's do something very exciting. Now, let's actually hook up that computer again and actually see what type of performance I was getting with those games that I was playing back then. That's going to be exciting, so let's get to that. All right, everyone, welcome to the final portion of this video. I'm going to be playing through some of the more popular games and more graphically intensive games that I got when I built this PC. And yeah, so here we are on the desktop, Windows 7. Classic start menu back in the day, pretty crazy. So I have Steam, Origin, Uplay, as well as games for Windows Live, which was how you got your PC games for Microsoft. There's no Microsoft Store back then, so that's an old legacy Windows Vista thing. You would connect your account, and you'd be able to earn achievements that would appear on your Xbox Live profile. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, so I'm going to open up Steam here, start the computer. Now I have, in order to capture gameplay, I'm doing my camera off-screen capture. The reason is, honestly, if I were to try to do direct capture on this PC, I would probably just strain the performance of it, to have, doing some capture software, as well as, me trying to play an intensive game at the same time. So I wanted it to sort of be, you know, I wanted to show the games in their best possible form. So here are some games I have. Like I said, I'm not going to play through every single one of these, because it doesn't make sense for me to play through Dishonored or like Remember Me or any of these sort of smaller games here that aren't so graphically intensive. I want to play games that are actually graphically intensive. So I'm going to go through here. Let's check out Batman Arkham Origins first. This was a late in the generation 7th gen title. I think it came out in October, a month before the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One had released. So this was a prequel to the previous Arkham games, and it was not developed by Rocksteady. But I did play it back in the day. I thought it was decent. Has a very interesting story, that's for sure, but it's kind of been forgotten about. Since the release of, or since Rocksteady made the other Arkham games. No one really really pays attention to Arkham Origins, but it does exist. So I went through prior to this and I actually optimized all of the games on my system. What does optimized mean? Optimized means that I went through every game, went through all the graphical settings, and I maxed out my GPU utilization with all the best possible settings that I could. So these were the games that I played in their best possible graphical presets that I could get, giving me 1080p resolution at 60 frames per second. So that was the target for this system. And we'll check this out. So let's go to our settings right here. Graphical settings, you can see we have 1080p as the resolution. FXAA is on for anti-aliasing. Geometry detail and dynamic shadows have DirectX 11 enhanced, which gives you basically features like tessellation and extra lighting effects. This was like the next generation API for graphics back in the day. So depth of field's on normal, ambient occlusion's on normal. Now NVIDIA PhysX is on high. PhysX allowed for GPU accelerated particle effects and cloth physics and all this advanced stuff, and it could really change the way a game looked. It just allowed for a great control of dynamism and interactivity in the game environments. As you'll see, I think it affects Batman's cape as well as the snow in the environments. All right, here we are. Looks like we're at, some stutters there. 85 frames per second. There is some stuttering though, and I wonder if that has to do with the fact that this is an old computer. I tried to close down everything that was sort of running in the background, so we'll see. But you can see, we're in the 80 frames per second range. My GPU utilization is at 98% right now. And NVIDIA PhysX is on high. So the snow right now, all the snow particles are actually interacting with Batman. They're bouncing off of him. You're changing directions. You can see some of the particles. God, there's a lot of stutters here. Some of the particles are kind of, twisting and twirling. So I thought this game was okay. It didn't feel as polished. There was something about the combat in this game that I didn't care for. It just didn't feel as responsive to play. But, you can see here I'm still in the 80s. Ooh. Forgive me as I'm trying to learn how to play with mouse and keyboard all over again. Ooh. God, I'm doing awful here. So you really can't go wrong with this. And on top of that, you have NVIDIA PhysX. You might be noticing as I'm fighting right now, the snow particles are, they're getting kicked up. They're completely interacting with the environment. And as I'm like whooshing past people, they're following Batman. This is some of those exclusive PC features that just, it adds that, small little polish on top of a gorgeous presentation that just makes it look that much better. Boom. Yeah, this is beautiful. All right, next up, let's take a look at BioShock Infinite. This was a game that I originally purchased on Xbox 360 like an idiot, and I should have just bought the PC version and just played it there. But my first experience was on Xbox 360, even though I had built this computer. I had this very odd mindset back in the day that if I played a game or if I played a series on one particular console, then I had to get the rest of those games on that platform. I think it was some type of OCD thing, that I was going through at the time. Like I wanted everything organized, right? And it sucks because that ended up being a detriment to my game experience. I could have had a far superior game experience on the PC here, and my computer could have run it perfectly fine, as you guys are about to see. So here are the settings. Have anti-aliasing on, normal texture detail, high filtering though, dynamic shadows on very high, post-processing is normal. Light shafts are enabled, ambient occlusion is high, object level detail is ultra. All right, and frame rate is uncapped. We're going to take a look here and play the game. Yeah, I played all the DLC for this. I enjoyed it. Let's see where I am. Why don't we go here? Get some combat in. So yeah, again, one of those games that just opinions change over time. And I don't really understand why. People are just bizarre, The community kind of shifts to different angles. So take a look at this, 70 frames per second. I'll never forget playing this on Xbox 360, and there was one of the biggest differences I've noticed in gaming. The biggest difference with this game when I first played it on Xbox 360 versus later on the PC here. I'll never forget this moment. Is I was playing the game and I came across this door, and it was, one of those doors where it's BioShock, how you walk up to the door and it opens. But the doorknob on the door was not 3D geometry. It wasn't sticking out. It was just a flat texture on the door. And I'll never forget playing the game, and I was just like, there's no doorknob. It's just a picture of a doorknob attached to a door. And on the PC, it was actual 3D geometry. It just, when I saw that, I was like, that alone just shows you how stretched thin those consoles were. But take a look at this, man. Look how gorgeous this game is. 100 fucking frames per second on this computer. This is 1080p resolution. On consoles, you had 720p. You had, frame rate that was 30 frames per second that had dips, and then you had flat textures for doorknobs. I'm over 100 frames per second right now on a upper mid-range card. But just a tremendous, tremendous game, and it looks gorgeous. It really does, even all these years later. Look at all this smoke right here. Look at the texture detail. Right now, I'm actually maxing out the VRAM. If you take a look at that, so the VRAM's at 1.2 gigabytes, which is way, that's our max there. So let's take a look here. Let's see if I can turn down my texture filtering. All right, now we're back at 775. So, this is the limitation that I ran into with this graphics card. 1.2 gigabytes of VRAM. The texture settings had to be kind of turned down. But yeah, take a look at this, man. Look at this performance. I'm in the 70s. The game looks phenomenal. This was again, last year of the generation, late in the generation game on the consoles, and it just looks phenomenal. It looks phenomenal, and it plays great too. And it just looks great. You look at this game, you're like, wow. You look at the first BioShock, compared to this game, it's a very different game. And BioShock 1 still looks phenomenal to this day. All those games they're very heavy on the art. They just age so well. All right, next up is Metro Last Light, the Complete Edition, which I love this game, and I did play it on PC first. I never liked the Metro series. I should say I never liked Metro 2033. That was the first game I played, the first Metro game, and I didn't like the way it played. I thought the original game was very, janky, and I didn't like the way the controls felt. I tried playing it a few times and I just couldn't get into it. So naturally, when Last Light came out and it started getting all these incredible reviews, I was like, I don't care. But I decided to give it a chance. Dude, what the fuck is the frame rate at right now? There we go. All right, it's doing some loading or some shit. Yeah, so naturally when Last Light came out, I was just like, wow, this, when I played it and I gave it a shot, I was so surprised because they just improved on everything that was wrong with the original 2033. Everything from a gameplay standpoint, it was just fantastic. So I loved Last Light. Now we have 1080p here, normal quality. The graphical settings are not so deep in this game, unfortunately. So just normal graphics. Anisotropic filtering at 4x because I'm running into VRAM limitations there. Normal motion blur, but high tessellation. Now, if you take a look, though, if we go to the game options, advanced physics is on. So this allows for, again, sort of interactive particles and dust and stuff like that. So we'll take a look here and see. Gosh, I'm trying to remember levels in this game. All right, I skipped back actually. So here's a level where we're outside, very complex environments, very dense level, and, it's bright outside. We got shadows going on, 65, 75, 70 frames per second basically. This is a beautiful, beautiful game that looks good. Looks so good. And again, another game that was kind of limited by the consoles at the time. You could only do so much. I think I did play the DLCs for this game as well. And I love Last Light. Exodus looks fantastic, and I did play that on the Xbox One X back when that game came out. And even then, like the PC version, especially when you had the ray tracing versions, I mean, those games are just beautiful. But considering the times, again, 2013, I mean, to get a presentation like this with graphics like this and environments of this complexity, this is shocking. It's like, wow, what a huge difference. All right, I want to check out the very first Tomb Raider, or I should say the reboot Tomb Raider of 2013. This game was, huge back then, and still is. So anyway, we have 1080p resolution here. Basically, everything is on max settings. However, I had to turn down things like shadows, the shadow resolution. I have high reflections, normal hair quality, so Tress Effects is not on. Let's keep that in mind. There are a lot of things with this game, where it was very advanced on PC, next generation on PC. And at the time, you didn't have that on consoles. It had dips on consoles. I played this, again, like BioShock Infinite, I made the mistake of playing this game on Xbox 360 first, even though I could have played it on the PC and it would have been perfectly fine. I was an idiot for some reason. I did that, but at 70 frames per second, and look at these environments, man. This game does a great job of just selling its atmosphere. Beautiful water effects. Love all the particles flying in the air. And stuff like Tress Effects isn't on right now. This is her normal hair that you would get on consoles. So if I want to turn on Tress Effects, I lose like almost 30 frames. It goes down to like in the 40s basically. So it's pretty bad. But with the high frame rate, you just have the precision, being able to land these shots. It's like you become a better player, and the game still looks phenomenal even without her, next generation hair. This game still looks great. But still, we're in the mid 70s here, and sneaking through an enemy guard post. We got fire, we got particles, and there's explosions and stuff. It's crazy. This is a beautiful game. It really is. How do I... There we go. Here. Yeah. Again, I should have purchased this game on PC first and played it there. I was a fool. Just look at that, man. Still in the 60s with everything that you're seeing right now. All those explosions. There's a depth of field filter in the background, so it looks even more cinematic, and you got particles and stuff. It's just awesome. Alrighty, so here we are on EA Origin, and there are two games in particular I want to play. One is Battlefield 3. This game, for me... Oh my god, I completely forgot that... I completely forgot that back in the day that you launched Battlefield from a browser. Yeah, if you were on PC, Battlefield actually launched from a browser. As weird as that sounds, it actually was a pretty cool way of accessing the game. It actually saved you a lot of time. But yeah, you pick a lobby and you have to join it from here. I guess we'll just do this one. It's a low ping. Okay, loading into the game here. I have to check out my graphical settings as well. Maybe the game just ended. I think the game just ended and it started a new game. So 1080p again, high in ultra settings with SSAO as the anti-aliasing. So, or I'm sorry for the ambient occlusion, and then post-process anti-aliasing. So, yeah, this game looks phenomenal. I don't know what I should use as a weapon. Whoa, man, look at this. 80 frames per second, people. 80 frames per second. Look how good this game looks. Fuck, there's a helicopter that's on my ass right now. Ooh, there he is. Oh, they got him. This game looks night and day from the console versions to this. Like, it's such a big difference. It's nuts. Oh, fuck. I don't even know what any of the controls are. But you could just see here, I mean, you got so much more just from a visual presentation, but also the gameplay. 64-player matches with large maps, much larger versions of the maps than you got on consoles. And look at this performance, man. A 560 Ti, and I'm getting almost 90 frames per second at 1080p with high and ultra settings, a combination of them. This is just beautiful. I'm not going to play a full multiplayer match here, but I fucking miss this game. This is a beautiful game. It's a well-optimized game. It runs fantastic. You can't complain about the visual quality here. You really can't. There's no way you can complain about this. Especially for, me building a PC for $1,100 at the time. I mean, seriously. But, I could play this competitively, easily, Especially if I had my 144 hertz monitor back. Just look at that lighting, man. This was 2011. This game is 11 years old. And it looks this good. Shit. Oh, I got him, I think. Alright, well, that was the end of the game. But you got the general idea of it, Just exceptional performance. Beautiful. I love this game to death. It's awesome. Alright, next up I want to try Crysis 3, because this is a game that, as far as I'm concerned, was unplayable on the last generation of systems. Well, I should say on that generation of systems. I cannot believe that they sold this game on PS3 and 360 in this state that it was in. Not only were you getting lower than low settings on PC, 720p resolution. In fact, I think it ran just under that, if I'm remembering correctly. It wasn't even 720p. And on top of that, you had frame rate that was consistently at like 20 to 25 frames per second. I mean, it was bad. A lot of people say that Crysis 2 ran bad, and I did play it somewhat recently. I don't remember it running as poorly as Crysis 3. This game was just too fucking much for the systems. So on my PC, I'm playing with 1080p, SMAA medium T2X on the anti-aliasing, medium textures. We got very high, very high, medium, one medium for shading, and then the rest is high. So basically high and ultra settings with medium shaders. This game looks phenomenal, and it seems to me that I can't Oh, I guess my save file got lost. Oh shit. Seriously? There's 3 people playing? I'm impressed. Wow. There's actually people playing this. I thought that they shut down the servers for the multiplayer. I guess we're gonna do Skyline, right? Yeah. Man, look at this game. Look how good this game looks. 90 frames per second, people, at a game that could barely run, and it ran at lower than low settings on PC. If I turned this down to low settings, it would still look better than it does on PS3 and 360. This game, as far as I was aware, wasn't possible. It just couldn't run on those machines. It looked too good. It was too complex. I mean, look at this, man. We're not playing with nanosuits on. Look at those reflections right here as well. Screen space reflections. All this stuff that just wasn't there on the consoles. But I just wanted to... Ooh, there we go. Got him. Yeah, I'm so surprised that people are actually playing this, you know? Nice, I got him too. Alright, next time I die, we'll call this a video. Oh, okay. Pretty cool look at Crisis there. So, I had a good time. Sorry to those guys who I left. I think they're waiting for someone to come in to balance the game. Oops. Alrighty, want to check out Far Cry 3. This is, again, was one of those games where I had built this PC specifically for this game. And this game was another one of those games, as far as I was concerned, that was essentially unplayable on the 360 and PS3. I mean, most people played it on there, sure, but that game ran like dog shit. It was. You know, if you go back to the Digital Foundry article, that game was in the 20s most of the time, and it did not run very well. You know, these days they have the classic version, which is kind of like Far Cry 3 remastered in a way, and it's essentially a PC port of the game, but even then you're stuck at 30 frames per second. So what was I getting on my PC at the time? On my consoles, again, 720p. The supposed to be a target of 30 frames per second. It was more of a, you know, missed target, I would say. But look at this, 1080p, DirectX 11, enhanced alpha to coverage. This allowed for like shadows and different stuff with foliage. HBAO, ambient occlusion. Let's go back to visual quality here. High, 1 medium, which is post-processing effects, very high geometry, very high vegetation, and the rest is high. So let's say it's high and ultra with like a mix of like, you know, 1 medium for post-processing effects. So those are my optimized settings here. Let's just continue. 90 frames per second. Let's go outside here. 70 frames per second. On a game that was basically unplayable on the PS3 and 360. It was really variable performance. It did not look that good, and it did not perform that well at all. I mean, I love if you take a look under the gun, right, where my character is holding the gun, take a look at the spacing between the gun and his hand. There's like a dark shadow there. It's those small little things that just adds to the visual complexity. You know, it's a lot of small little things that just makes the environment so dynamic. And God, the performance is just unwavering. Mid 70s here, you're getting tremendous performance. It looks fantastic. It plays fantastic. There's a fucking parachute. Did I just die? I did. You know, it still looks good to this day. As far as I was concerned, this was a next generation game at the time that they had ported over. Oh, look, there's enemies. Good. That they had just ported over, and it was just too ambitious for the hardware. This game should have released on the PS4 and Xbox One. Again, we should have had those consoles, like, if those consoles came out 2 years before they actually did, I feel like that would have been a very good time frame, and we wouldn't have had such, you know, detrimental performance on some of those late-gen games. But as it stands, that did not happen. I mean, really, just look at this game, man. It's still beautiful. Still to this day. Ugh. Just awesome. Oh, there's a crocodile right there. Just awesome. All right, and finally, as a surprise, I wanted to do this, kind of as a joke just to see what would happen. So the last date that this graphics card got driver support for was Tuesday, March 27th, 2018. And that same month, the last game to have released, basically, that I would have played on the PC, is Far Cry 5. So I want to see how this graphics card is going to do. We'll try to get this game running as best as we can. We're basically going to play around with this game and more or less, run it on this GTX 560 Ti and actually see what type of performance we were getting. I think on PS4 and Xbox One, this game runs at 1080p. It might be a dynamic resolution. So this is a 560 Ti, a last generation card. It didn't have all those advanced features, but I just want to see how the hell is this game going to run on the PC with all of this, with the settings and just how advanced it is. Could I actually get Far Cry 5 to run on this card? I am very curious about that, so that's what we're going to find out. I'm going to skip through while it does this installation. Alrighty, everyone, here we are with Far Cry 5. I just completed the installation. Right now it seems to try, or wants to try to boot up the actual main menu here. Here we go. So here's how here's what I'm going to do here. When I'm optimizing games, there's one thing I pay attention to, and that's the actual GPU utilization. If you see my mouse cursor here in the top corner here, where it's jumping from like 88%, 94, how it is right now, that is the GPU utilization. That means basically how much the GPU is being used, and that tells me directly how much extra headroom I have from when this game is being basically when I'm maxing out the power of my GPU versus what it can do. So this is what we're going to try. Now it says my graphical quality settings have been set to match the hardware. Let's see what they decide. Let's start off with low settings. All right, let's start off with low settings and go as low as we possibly can go. This is field of view scaling. Usually I set that at 90. Dynamic frame. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And then there's a resolution scale mode. All right, so we're at, right now we're maxing out the VRAM. There's nothing about it, but we're over 30 frames per second. What I want to see right now is I want to lower that resolution. That to me seems a little bit crazy that I would play this game at 1080p. Let's realistically go down to 720p. It looks like it's the lowest it will go. Let's apply the changes. 720p, low settings. Yeah, we're still at 40 frames per second. So right now, what's limiting me is not actually the graphics at all. It's the VRAM. I'm maxing out my VRAM, which is causing this game to kind of stutter and have issues loading stuff. So right now, I'm not sure what else we can do here to this presentation to try and get this game to run at all. Let's turn, we have dynamic. Okay, let's turn off dynamic resolution. Ah, okay. Look at our frame rate now. I think there might have been an issue with dynamic resolution. We're still going to get stutters because of the VRAM limitation, but right now I'm like just over 60 frames per second. So the stutterings that you're seeing right now is the VRAM that's causing this game to just kind of lock up because it's trying to load textures and there's not enough memory for it to load textures. And so it's like freezing the game. Despite that, on its own, it's still running at 60 frames per second, around there. Yeah. Let's see if we can go lower. I want to see, because there's a resolution scale in this game. Let's go all the way down. As low as we possibly can go. Oh my god. Look at that. This must be like 480p, maybe even less than that. What's half of 720p? half of 720p would be what was that, 360p? Am I right on that? Is it 360p? I think this is 360p resolution right now. And again, still maxing out that VRAM. There's nothing we could do about that, but ooh, we might have the game crash. It kind of wants to. My computer's like, what is this? If there was no VRAM limitation, we could probably play this game at like 70 FPS at 360p resolution, which is just, kind of insane here. This is not how you would want to play the game, but as an experiment, I think it's a bit interesting. This is the final game that would have gotten driver support for this card. And, I mean, yeah. Big explosion there. Let's see how this game would perform with 1080p and like completely maxed out settings. That's what I want to check. Completely maxed out settings. So, can we do ultra? All right, we'll turn on high anti-aliasing and motion blur. This is the game running as best as it can at 1080p. Looks good, but it's in the 20s. Which honestly, hey, if you're fine with 30 FPS and there's no VRAM limitation, that's not bad. I mean, right now, this is still better than what you got on the PS4, PS4 wasn't running ultra settings. But yeah, major VRAM limitations. What the sad part is that this performance was sometimes what many people were getting during the PS3 and 360 life cycle. Far Cry 3 wasn't a far cry from this performance. That's the truth, actually. Especially if you go back and watch some of those videos now of the frame rate analysis, it's like you didn't realize it back then because, that was just standard on the consoles, was having performance like that. But these days, with how smooth games have gotten, yeah. This is like Crysis 3 territory on the consoles. But as an experiment, I think it was worth doing. Pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, that was me stress testing this PC. So what do you guys think about that? I think the performance is pretty respectable, all things considered. I mean, honestly, when it comes to that generations of game experiences, I mean, yeah, the PS3 and 360 were just really stretched thin, and this PC really helped mitigate and provided me a lot of those experiences at much better than what I would have gotten on the consoles. So anyway, let me know what you guys think of the performance there, but I'm generally happy with that. This is a very solid PC even all these years later.
All right, so there you guys have it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video series. I really, really appreciate it. I know some of you have actually been subscribed since those original videos. And, even with all the views that those videos have accumulated over the years, I just wanted to do something special because it was a very significant part of my time here on YouTube. And, overall, I have to say that I'm very happy I kept this PC all these years. I don't really use it, but, it's nice to actually have this around for opportunities like this. And, I think it's just a cool look back at what the times were like back then and what I was actually gaming on. As you can see, some of those experiences are very respectable. And considering, just, again, how much the PS3 and 360 were stretched thin during that generation. I love those machines to death. I absolutely love those consoles. I think they're great. But, the games got so ambitious. And when you're running systems with half a gigabyte of RAM and, these anemic, processors, minus the PS3's custom, cell, which, when used properly could really just change the game there. But, that's the thing, when used properly. I think it was a very, very, very interesting time. And overall, I'm really happy about this build. And I thank you guys who have stuck with me over these years, especially if you've been here for that long and watched those videos back when they were new. It's been a long time, but hey, I always say that, you know, it's not so much a failure if you can learn from your mistakes and you know, use that to sort of propel you to do better. And that's what I did with you know, this build. I made mistakes there. I had owned up to them, accepted responsibility for them, and I did my redemption build of building the current computer that I have now. And yes, I, you know, still make mistakes and I still learn, but you know, that's just part of the life process. So however it is, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you the next time I build a computer, which, you know, my rule is much more strict now. I will definitely not be building another $4,000 or $5,000 computer like I did with that 4K gaming PC. There was too much pride stuck in those videos. So, all right, thank you guys, and have a really good day.